Hello, this is Belinda Colleen, and I have a YouTube channel about reselling. And I thought today would be a good day to talk about different sourcing paths that you can take, different sources that you can use other than Goodwill. And while Goodwill can be a very good spot depending on what you're buying, um, there are many other places that you can source. And I know as a I'm at my 2 year mark now. I just passed it, and I feel the need, and I guess we all do, to kind of try some new things at times and do some things differently. And as the community seems to get larger and larger, and there's always a lot of competition, I think it becomes very important to find other sourcing avenues. And I'm in a metro area of Atlanta, east of Atlanta, and there's one Goodwill here, and there's one Savers here. So I've got those two that I go to quite a bit, but I can go into Atlanta, and that really opens up things greatly. And then there's a couple, so I would say within an hour and maybe an hour and 15 minutes of my house, there's oh, probably 15, 20 thrift stores or consignment stores that I can go to. So I feel like I'm blessed in that way. Some people don't have as many options as that. So I feel real good about that. But I have thought many times that I'd like to open up a little bit more too and try some of the auctions. I've heard a lot of real good things about Whatnot and online auctions. I've heard a lot of people talking about those, and they seem happy thrifting there. The only thing about Whatnot, from what I understand, it's a lot of the things sold on Whatnot might not be the types of things you would be wanting to put on eBay, for instance. But I do need to check it out. I kind of did a little bit of research on it, so I don't really know a lot about it other than what I've heard YouTubers talk about. But anyway, I thought I did a little more research about Goodwill, and evidently there are so many mom and pop thrift stores out there that you can use those as alternatives to Goodwill, especially if you feel like the pricing has gotten high there. I've gotten to where I try to go there and take advantage of their sales, their half price tags especially. And but I really don't like spending much more than the half price mark at Goodwill, although occasionally I'll still get a real good deal there. But I have more luck at the mom and pop or the little independent thrift stores. They seem to be priced much better. And so there's a lot of those that I try to go to that are in Atlanta especially. And then they have special days where they have colored days that are coded or whatever, but I'm sure you guys know that. Something else that I love to go to, but I have to say, you really have to look to find the deals, is at the estate sales. I have gotten some great deals at those, but sometimes it's the third day. Seems to be people that discuss, well, if you go on the first day, everything's fresh and you get your first dibs, so to speak, on some great things. Whereas if you wait until the third day, everything's on sale, but it's already been picked through. So I've done both, and sometimes I will go the first day and the third day, depending on what I saw there on the first day. In estate sales, I don't see as many of those. I see a lot of garage sales, but definitely garage sale season is over, even in Georgia, and we have pretty warm weather here, but honestly, now it's gotten cold here. And I would say that in my area anyway, garage sale season's from like March or April until October, and then they sort of die down, for the winter or whatever. But I have found some great deals that way. And the thing I found myself being reluctant to do, and I'm trying to make sure I do it more, is scanning things and looking things up when I'm sitting there in front of an owner. but I've got to get away from thinking or being self-conscious about that. And wholesaling is another sourcing option that I haven't really gotten involved with. I've thought about it, and I just need to find more options for that. That's on my list of things that I want to look into, and I'd love to hear from you. Drop something down in the notes or whatever, and tell us what your experience has been with wholesalers. It sounds like it could be a great way to go, or bulk buys, depending on how you look at it. I know a lot of people, especially during the winter, will do more bulk buying because they don't have the garage sales. And flea markets are something I know there was a big flea market in Athens, Georgia, which is where I used to live, and I went to that a couple of times. But I don't know, there's probably flea markets around here that I need to look up also. But I am going to start. I've decided to do something that I never thought I would do in this business, which is get some business cards and start passing them around. And because I do think there's something to be said if you can find some situations where you can buy a lot of inventory from a family, for instance. Certain people will go out of business, that are doing this, and then they want someone to buy their items. And then you have situations where, unfortunately, people are, or fortunately, depending on the situation, they're downsizing a little bit, and maybe they want to get rid of an awful lot of things, but they don't really want to have a garage sale or an estate sale. So there's a lot of opportunities. You just have to let people know what you're doing. And because I'm a little bit on the shy side, it's not like me to just start passing out business cards. But I think I'm going to have to get past that and start trying to do more networking, because that's going to be, anything that we can get on the way to Goodwill is probably the best route to go, is to get it in the middle, before it goes to the Goodwill and then gets marked up. And I do think there's probably a lot of opportunity to do that. It just gets tricky. You have to be careful about that, and I've thought about it a lot because I've had 2 incidents that happened, really in the last 2 months, where I've had a family member approach me, and they were being relocated, and but they were 2 hours from my house where they were leaving. And they said, oh, you can have, you can come up here and have, get the stuff and bring a truck. Well, I have an SUV, but I don't have a truck. And so I was a little bit, we talked some on the phone, because I didn't want to spend 4 hours on the road with a rented truck and then not really benefit that much from it. And this is where buying from people that especially, you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and you don't want to say, well, or by saying something to the effect that isn't the kind of thing I sell. So we did end up talking on the phone, and I tried to be real careful with their feelings, and just basically said, that I was pretty specific about what I buy, and that I mostly buy clothes and a few household items, and that I didn't think it would be worth the 4-hour round trip. It would have been 4 hours for me to go there, and then to rent the truck on top of it. I just had a feeling that just wouldn't make sense. And I know them somewhat, and they aren't the type to buy collectibles or whatever. They're very utilitarian, which is fine. But she didn't have that many clothes, so it just didn't make sense for me. And I told her that. And believe me, I always think, well, there's probably great opportunities to do that with the right people, with the right stuff. And so I have thought about, I could have handled that differently by asking them to send pictures and that type of thing to just get a better idea. But by the time, I spent the money on the truck and all the time to go up there, I really didn't think it would be worth it for me, to be honest. And that's always going to be the tricky part. And when people pass away and their family ends up with all of their things, I think a lot of times people do take the great stuff, the family takes what they want, and then there's things left over. And then you, as a buyer, you just have to assess whether that's the kind of thing you want to sell. And then I had another friend that approached me, and she asked me, she said a friend of hers was looking to sell a lot of things and wondered if I would do that for them, because a lot of people want to sell their things on eBay, but they don't want to get on eBay and they don't want to tackle it, and they just don't know how to, and they don't really want to, because in their mind it's a one-time deal. And I think it's viewed as a big hassle, and it is, if you're just going to do it for as a one-time deal. So we talked a little bit about it and decided, she was like, at first we were supposed to meet halfway, and she was going to bring a lot of her things, and we were going to look at it together. And then she decided that she wanted me to come to her, and she was all probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours away. And believe it or not, still in Metro Atlanta, but Metro Atlanta is a big, huge area. And I said, well, I don't think I want to drive out there, because I just didn't want to. And I didn't know her, and I didn't know what she had. And it sounded like, it could have been a good deal. So I worry that I'm, on the one hand, I'm trying to get some of this business. On the other hand, I'm pushing it away. So I've got to come up with some better questions and ways to find out if it's going to be worth my while before I start driving all over the place. And I've been thinking about that a little bit, and I would love to hear people's ideas on that. I do think I need some sort of a questionnaire, and I need to see maybe pictures ahead of time, because I obviously don't want to spend an awful lot of time to pick up 3 or 4 things if that's all I end up wanting from a big lot of things. But I think that is some avenue that I want to look at, because I do feel a real need to open up my sourcing abilities and try some new things and try some new places, just because it's important, I think, to always know what's available out there. And Goodwill has gone up a lot. It's kind of interesting. I've noticed this, like out where I am, I'm out in Metro in a suburb area, and our prices are pretty good. But when I go down into Atlanta, the Goodwill prices are much higher, which is interesting. So they evidently do price by area. But I think having relationships set up probably makes a lot of sense. Now, I'm thinking too about storage units. I've always been a little bit reluctant to buy a storage unit, because you really, you don't know what you're buying a lot of times. But from what I understand, they now have auctions online for some of the storage units, which sounds better and like something that might be a possibility. But I just think it would probably take a lot of space to sort through this stuff. So that, there are many, many ways in sourcing avenues. And I have to say, I have relied almost entirely on thrift stores and garage sales and estate sales. Less estate sales, more garage sales, and thrift stores. Because I have a lot of thrift stores to go to, I have relied on that. I've been to the Bins twice, and that's about a 2-hour drive for me, so I don't go that often. And some of the thrift stores that I go to will have dollar days and things like that, so I can kind of mimic the type of deal I would get at the Bins. I'll be honest with you, I know a lot of people that rely heavily on the Bins, and they do quite well with it. I had some luck at the Bins, but I just remember thinking it was a lot of effort and a lot of time for about the same kind of haul that I get when I go thrifting. That's much closer. The only thing is the bins, it is definitely cheaper. So I've got to think about that, because one of my goals is to get my average price down so that I can give better deals to my customers. Because when it's all said and done, it's going to be so important, I think, always. And as more people go into reselling, it's becoming more and more important to keep that price low, or get it as low as you can and still make a profit. And that, of course, is what we're all trying to do. So that's basically going to force people like me, resellers, all resellers, to try to get their average cost down as much as possible. So as you can see, I'm kind of processing out loud, thinking about things that I keep hearing about, and some of the things that I've tried a little bit. As far as wholesalers go, I don't quite know what to think about that. I know there are people that wholesale and have eBay stores or Poshmark stores, so they're doing both, and I have to wonder if they're not cherry picking all the best stuff and putting it on their eBay store and then kind of wholesaling the rest, which of course makes me wonder about the quality. And I'm sure there's probably some ways that you can kind of verify quality and that type of thing. I know Amazon does things, where you can buy a bunch of Amazon stuff that were returns, and some other places do that too. So there's no shortage of opportunities out there. I have done the Whatnot thing, watched the shows. I also feel like the things on Whatnot there are some really good things on Whatnot, but I honestly, for the amount of time that you spend trying to do the auction and go on the auction and the hype, because you don't really have time to look things up. And I already, struggle with that, because sometimes I just get lazy and I want to shoot from the hip and say, oh, that looks great, I'm going to get that. I'm trying to be better about looking things up to make sure I'm getting high demand, but I am starting, after a couple of years now, starting to recognize brands and also recognize certain items that are just going to do well because of the aesthetic. I mean, the trends, I really am trying to stay on top of the trends, so that it's not all about the BOLOs, or the BOLOs are like, the brands you're on the lookout for. That's what BOLO stands for, brands on the lookout for. And honestly, I started off trying to memorize those brands, and I did memorize quite a few of them, and they're still in my mind. But the things I tend to remember the most, I've noticed, are the things that I've sold in my shop. I always remember those. So, I find that interesting. And two, I think certain brands seem to sell more in huge cities, or some more on the West Coast, some more on the East Coast. It's kind of interesting. And of course, there are certain brands that are everywhere. But I'll hear people talking about brands, and I'll think, I have never seen one of those, I don't think. I always hear about Mother, about that brand, and that sticks in my head for some reason. And I've seen the M. I've seen people show their items that were that brand, and I've never seen that when I've been thrifting. So it's kind of interesting when you think about all the brands that you hear about that you can't find. And I have a feeling, if I open myself up more, and if and quite frankly, I've thought about buying online, not necessarily at auctions, but just going on eBay and looking for deals on eBay. And I think that it is a struggle to get the prices down low enough, unless you get into the luxury items. I think if I like to sell really, luxury shoes. I do stay away from the luxury handbags, though. I know some people make a very good living doing that. One of my friend's sisters got kicked off of eBay because there was some kind of authentication thing, and she swears that it was an authentic bag. And so I don't know. That sounds complicated, and I don't want to put myself at risk. So most of the time when I see a bag that looks like a, you know, a $400 or $500 bag, I just steer clear of it, and I try to go through for the mid-level, nice leather bags that are, you know, obviously high quality, but they're not the luxury brands. I think I'm just nervous about jumping into that. You know, so finding one of those every 6 months or whatever, it doesn't seem worth it if I might end up getting in trouble over it and it becoming a big hassle. I'd rather buy 10 other items that are not going to give me trouble and where I don't have to worry about authentication and that kind of thing. But I wonder how many people do that, you know, do that type of thing. So, but I think I am going to start thrifting some, and I believe I've been on the other end of that on eBay. I'm quite sure that people are buying from me to resell sometimes, especially if I get down and dip down on my price. I find that interesting, and it also makes me think I've really got some work to do to improve my pricing, or to understand better what the pricing can be, and I'm trying to pick up my game with better keywords and that type of thing so that I will get the most benefit from my items, and won't be reselling to other resellers. Although, I mean, you know, if I'm willing to do it, I'm willing to do it. But that, of course, makes me think, okay, Belinda, you're not getting the most for this. You know, you can do better. I feel like I'm sort of being very running around the world right now with my ideas, but sourcing is the most fun to me. But it also, I think, is an area where you can always improve, and it's always going to be important to improve. I heard this gentleman say, who's been doing it for 15 years, he said, everybody should be going to, you know, when you go out thrifting, you should be hitting 15, 20 stores. And I thought, oh my goodness. I mean, I don't even think I could hit 15 or 20 stores in one day, even though, I mean, maybe if I, well, I just don't think I could. I think that would be too many. I'd rather go to 4 or 5 stores and really spend some time in them. Because I find that the first 5 minutes I'm in a store, I'm kind of hyped up, you know, and trying to race around and pull things that look like, you know, the best things at first glance, and then sort of take a slower trip around the store after that and take my time a little bit more and dig a little bit more. So based on the way that I tend to thrift, I could probably only do a few stores a day. But this guy that I watched, and I've seen, you know, some people are just really fast, and I guess I don't thrift that fast. But sourcing is one of the big questions I always hear people talk about, and it's always something that I'm thinking about. You know, what can I do to up my game? What can I do to get the best items for the lowest prices? And I know that's something that we're all challenged by. Anyway, it was good spending a little bit of time with you today. Excuse me, I'm just a little tired tonight, and it's late, and I just hope that I said something that maybe just got you thinking about some things. That's the reason I watch YouTube, is I figure if I can learn 1 or 2 things from every YouTube video I watch, then I'm going to get better at doing this, and I hope that I can share some of those ideas too. We can all learn from each other. Happy holidays. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.